Yes, definitely. Good morning, everybody, and really thank you, the IAS colleagues, for the kind invitations. I want to share with you this morning about the journey or the story of how Singapore embarking on this aquaculture. We all know that Singapore never an agri or aquaculture country since independence. And why are we doing this? So it's part of the sharing, and I hope you can enjoy my story. So I would like to go into sharing on my slides. So my story will be sharing what's the future for the Singapore in the quest in aquaculture. So just give you a brief introductions. We know we have food story in Singapore, and the reason we use story and not using strategy is because story means everybody involved, everybody within the country should be part of the story writings. So we have done the energy story, completed about the story many years ago. So moving to the next story, that is the food story. And we have a target to set. That's by 2030. We are supposed to produce 30% of our nutritional needs. And that is a target. And to our people, it's a stretch target. It's not going to be easy to achieve. But we believe, I think we could and we should. So the strategic parts from the Singapore Food, the authority, that is we have three basically basket. The first basket is diversification of the import sources. This one we have been doing that for many years. So we actually import a lot of the producers from the region countries and also beyond. And the next one we're going for 2030 is actually go local. So we experience from the COVID, the logistic disruptions. So the growing local is very critical, even though we do not have enough lands to do that. And the third basket is actually go global. So we would like to say develop the technologies that allow farmers to venture outside of Singapore, go to the countries where they can provide us cheaper space, cheaper labor or cheaper resources to grow the food for Singapore. So this is in general three basket strategy for Singapore.
Now, just to share with you a snapshot on our farming, we all know Singapore is a very small country. And if you look at the table on your left, the land farms there is. So basically, you look at the vegetables, food, fish, all this. These are the numbers of the farms we have. In total, 233 farms, including even the egg producer. Now, for the coastal farms, we have about 110. So we are relying on the land space and some sea space. So for the total land reserve actually for agriculture and aquaculture is less than 1% because the land is very, very competitive. A lot of industry are looking for lands. So as a result, as a policy, the lands will be allocated to industry that can generate the maximum returns. So somehow agri-aqua will not be able to compete due to lack of technologies to produce a high amount of the food with the limited resources that we have. So even for the land space, the sea space, we do have problem because the seas is shared with the shipping industry. So that's always limited the sea surface. So these are all the difficulties we are facing in Singapore. Now, if you look at the farming, and since we're never an agri-aquaculture industry, so the farmings, everything is actually quite primitive. So these are usual land-based farming system that you can see, or even coastal farming is actually in Malay what we call kelong. It is not productive at all. But again, Singapore, again, never rely on the foods to produce locally. We always import the food. And then this is moving forward, is go into the open sea, and hopefully we can able to solve the land restrictions and go into the sea using the sea surface. And these are some of the species that is covering culture within Singapore. So when we start to do this aquaculture industry, and we look at the challenges, and obviously very glaring is the scarcity of the land and sea space, right? And the manpower availability, because it's a small country, we have 5 million populations, and every industry looking for talent. And of course, facing the ever-increasing challenges coming from the environment. So these are the things. And in order for us to achieve 30 by 30 objective or goals, we strongly believe local farms, they must be very, very innovative and prepared to adopt the technologies to overcome all the challenges like 1, 2, 3 up here, and so that they can make more money. Because if they are not able to be productive, not be able to generate enough revenue, they were never able to retain the talents or workforce. So which means there's a catch-22 situation here that not only happening in Singapore, in many countries as well. So when we look into this, we know the challenges we have. Now we ask ourselves, can we turn the challenges into our advantage? This is how we solve our energy issue and solving our water issue. So with that, then very clearly, this advantage that we have, and can we turn that into advantage? That is a small size. So this is how we embark our story. That is, can small size be our advantage? If this is our advantage, how can we maximize it? So basically is, if it's small size is our disadvantages, the challenges that we are facing, then our strategy should be driven by necessity and not driven by strength. So we learn from business school that in any business, you have to be rely on your strengths. That's how we go out and compete and fight and win the battles. But in this case, can we flip it around, looking into the disadvantages, and that become a necessity driven? Since I don't have this, so if I develop something for something which I don't have, it's going to be very different outcome, different products, and also most probably able to achieve different so-called realm of the success. So that's how we go into the necessity-driven strategies. And because of that, we should be able to be ahead of the curve. So what do we mean by that? So we all know that the production system, especially for meat, okay, they're actually very far away from the city, right? And because of that, due to urbanization, the movement of the workers into the city because they pay better job, a better salary, and this will be constant shortage of the labor at the farms. So if you go to any countries, despite of the huge populations, the average farmer age is actually above 50s. So they are losing workers at the farms. And because of that, so their only way to retain the workers, okay, they should be able to pay them well, but they cannot pay them too well. Why? Because now our youth are very well educated. So they are not prepared to take very low salary. So to compensate them with a decent salary that is comparable to the city's job, they have to increase the productivity to have a generate revenue so that they pay the workers more. So it's a catch-22 situation, right? And also the production system right now is moving closer and closer to a city. And the reason for that is because we know we actually produce enough food for the world populations. But we are short of the food is because of the wastage. From the producers to the consumer, that is from the farms to the tables, there will be approximately 30 to 50% wastage of the food. So if we can move the production system closer to the city or closer to the consumer, then we can cut down that wastage. But if you move the production system closer to the city, you are going to face the problem that Singapore is facing today. That is the land cost goes up, labor cost goes up, so will be all your resources, energy, water, everything will be going up. So which means they are doing something that they can't do then. Okay, so they have to again adopt technology so that they use a minimum amount of the space, few workers, and recycle every drop of water they use, and at the same time stock up more animal per unit volume of water so that they can generate more revenue to pay the salary of their workers. So what it means is what Singapore is developing today potentially can be exported to other countries when they start facing one of these three challenges that Singapore is currently facing. So another advantage of Singapore we have is connectivity. We all know that, yeah. And that's the reason why Singapore can do well is because of the shipping hub that we have, the locality located at the Strait of Malacca, where all the ships has to pass through. So that's our connectivity. And because of that, also we know the aquaculture, our consumers all in Asia. 70% of the either producer or consumer are located in Asia. So we are very close to the market. And in Singapore policy, we always believe in sharing economics. So we work with everybody should be our friends and not enemies. So that is the advantage we are looking at. Small size, turn that to advantage and not the disadvantage. So what we do here in Singapore, first thing we do is we have to look for every possible space that are available. So look at all the rooftop, okay, look at the car park, look at all the vacant space, under the MRT tracks. So these are all the space we are utilizing it for farming. And of course, we need to do it properly. So Singapore set up, actually, we have the agri-tech food corridors where we could concentrate all the food production system together so that we have our so-called own ecosystem supporting each other's, and that will actually increase the efficiency and also better manage in terms of the waste. So that is the plan for Singapore that is building all this corridor for food productions. Now, moving into the futures, we are looking into really integrated approach. It cannot be the current extensive farming system. It has to be integrated, everything together. Plants, fish, everything come together. Okay, so even the sun and water catchment area. So it's an integrated approach for every establishment. And stretching our imaginations a bit further, we have talked about townships. Okay, a township where you work and live together and where everything is completely built and integrated, right? And try to have a so-called zero carbon footprints operation and that sort of thing. So this is the plans and Singapore is embarking on, and is moving very rapidly because of the logistic disruption, the food disruptions, that even though we are located at the logistic hub and where all the containers ships are passing through Singapore, but we still also worry about the disease X coming in again. That will be even more serious than current COVID-19. So with that, we are looking into IHL, Institute of Higher Learning, and they must play a very important part in this, because all the talents, all the resources actually builds up, okay, in the university and higher learning of higher institute of higher learning. So we want to get them all in. As a result, the model we have is actually alliance model, where aquaculture innovation centers will bring all members who are interested to support this particular industry in together and collaborate. That's very important, because we know scientists are not born to be very collaborative. Partly it's because they're competing for the same pot of funding. Okay, so research competitions drive them into isolations. So we find that is always a threat in collaborative manner and mindset. So we want to break that right from day one. We don't want them to compete. We want them to collaborate collectively. So that's why we set up this alliance model. And of course, whatever thing we do, we need the support of the government. So Enterprise Singapore is an agency under Ministry of Trade and Industry. So they are our funder. And of course, our Singapore Food Agency is the one, they are regulator. So they have to be a supporter or partner of this initiative. So the mission and visions of AIC is basically closing the loop in sustainable, super intensive aquaculture. And of course, the rest, blah, 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 is basically for the food security for the nations. Now, when we do this, we need to have four-pronged approach, like anything else. First, we need to have research, because if you don't do research, you're always following somebody. So you have to be doing research. As a result, we need to set up facility. And innovation is the one that is very important at this moment, is to support the industry, innovate them, and so that they can solve the technical difficulty they're facing today, allow them to generate more revenue so that they can retain the talents, they can have the expansion of the business. Now, for the enterprise part, we look at the launch pad, because we want to encourage more startup. Okay, we want to encourage companies overseas to land in Singapore, because using Singapore as a launch pad to springboards to the regional countries. And of course, we coming from the Institute of Higher Learning, we always strongly believe in training, and training is very important. But our training here is very different. We are not the usual theoretical type of the curriculum. Our courses are designed for practitioners. So we have this entrepreneurship in aquaculture, and in Singapore, we also have our own good aquaculture practices. So this is Singapore standards, because we find that the global gap is not really that applicable to our environments, because the situation is very different. So we develop our own standards, and that is more pertinent to our local situations. And of course, our biosecurity is very, very important. It has to be there. So these are the training programs we have to for the farmers. Now, for the technology parts, of course, we have three major clusters. The first one, let's say genetic breeding, seed production is one technology cluster, and nutrition feeds, additive, okay, even feeding management is one cluster. Disease, husbandry, management, all these things, one cluster. And all these three whole purpose is to develop super intensive aquaculture system for Singapore due to limitation in the water, space, and labor. Now, at the back, we have to drive with smart technologies. So Industry 4.0 is the one is going to move this development in the fastest pace, because our target is 2030. We have to produce 30% of our nutrition needs. So we have less than 10 years at this moment. So we need to use IR, 4.0 to drive this whole initiative. Now, because of that, from our experience so far, doesn't matter what strategy you have. In this particular industry, you need to have good infrastructure. That's why I believe that infrastructure actually driving the strategies. It's not like other life science industry where all you need is a lab benches, put your instruments and you can start to do research. But for aquaculture, you really need a lot of big tank and waters. Okay, so the infrastructures are very, very critical. So that's how we set up the infrastructure at Temasek Poly. And this is our buildings completed 2016 and 2019, where when AIC was founded. And of course, disease is very important. We also set up disease challenge facility, and this is very important because a lot of the businesses coming in, they have a good medication, they good additive, and they want to see how those things can be used to protect animal against the diseases. So disease challenge facility is very important, and we set this up at Temasek Poly as well. Now, moving forward, we also need to have a real farm to do the translation work and do trainings. Okay, so fortunately, we're able to get one of the old farms. The leases are expiring, so but we just have to use it due to limited space that we have. So we use this farm for our hatchery, for trainings, and also for on the job for the lab diagnostics of the neighboring farm as well, where they have difficulty with the disease. Now, we also have the investigation lab. That's very important because everything we do is not just testing. We actually investigate what is going on. So the lab here, we're setting up at the Nanyang Technological University, where we can access to all the infrastructure, the talents, allow us to provide the service to the industry to really solve the problem that they're facing, and once and for all. So these are the so-called infrastructures that we needed it, and we are also moving forward into setting up a container farming system so that to maximize every space or inch in Singapore so that we can stack the container. The moment the land is needed for other purpose, we just move the container to another space. So which means we maximize the so-called vacant space in Singapore and use them for productions. Now, what's the next phase of the technical support? And as mentioned that earlier on, that's the Industry 4.0 is very important. So when we look into this space, now, IR 4.0, we talk about all the computings, IoT, sensors, automation, and whatnot. But among all this, the most important thing is actually the AI. So we have to start with the AI. That's very, very important. So with that, we work with the big boys. We call them queen bees like AWS, SAS. So they are here to help us to build the AI so that we can have abilities to solve this complicated protein production system in the setting like in Singapore. So this is what we have, the schematics models that at this moment, we are actually at phase 4, that system within the system, where individual systems are communicating in a way is to support the productions. And moving forward with the help of AWS, we are going for system of system where our farm management system should be able to communicate with disease surveillance system, to the weather system, to the market system, and to all the other systems. So in a way, it's become very, very powerful that every time before the farmers start the productions, they have all this information in place, allow them to align and able to get the maximum return from the limited resources that they have. So we have Launchpad. Okay, so we are encouraging startup. And then again, because of the unique need of this industry, they just couldn't get tank and water or fishes. So that's why they need a very good facility to launch the project. So we have a Launchpad support for the startup. We also have lending strip because our government is actively inviting overseas companies, big boys to come to Singapore and to do innovations in Singapore. So for them to come, they need support as well, even though they're big companies. So the landing strip infrastructure and supports are very critical for us to invite big boys or the talented companies to come in. So this is the last slide. The last slide is our model. Our model that's I think is tied very close to the mission of IAAS. That is, we are looking at the public, private, and community partnerships. A lot of time we look at the PPP, only public and private partnerships. We are actually missing out the community. Community is very important. So we are incorporating community into this. So just to share with you what we have here for the investor, very important. That's the one that gives you some funding. So we need to have a government agency to support it. So we are fortunate to have the MTI through the agency and the Press Singapore to support our missions. And then the public sectors is providing the talents. That's why we brought all the institute in Singapore coming in together. The talents is beyond human, even including the infrastructure and support facility. So these are the public's contributions. Then the private contribution as well, because the private will be the one give us technologies, because technologies coming from private, they are matured. They're already marketing out already. So we are actually asking them, can their technology be translated to aquaculture or non-human markets? And 99% of the time, answer is yes, can be translated to aquaculture. So that allows a lot of the company benefited from this emerging industry, that the existing technologies is meant for human, but now they found a parent industry that can be applied to non-human markets like fish. So we have technology countries like Israel, very powerful, a lot of technology. Japan has a lot of technologies, and of course EU. So these are the so-called the sources of technologies we tap into, and then we bring to Singapore and we do the translation. Now, ultimately, it's a community, it's very important. So somebody must receive the value. So community on top about maybe farmers, okay, could be anything. So right now is we already have community beyond in ASEAN, okay, communities in India, even as far as Bhutan, and also we write on the communities established by Asian Development Bank, because Asian Development Bank actually have their own member countries and they're needing help as well. So we actually through the network of ADB and reach out and sharing the technologies, the insight, the knowledge to all the farmers so that they can increase the productivity, so that they can make a decent living and also solve the food scarcity for each country. Now, to do all this, we need a driver. That's why AIC is positioned as a driver to drive this initiative and drive not just for Singapore, also for the region and going beyond. So due to time, that's all I can share. My apologies for overrun a little bit, and we're happy to take some questions later on. Thank you.